Hey, church family. I think most of us appreciate the value of good service. Restaurants, hotels, and corporations are sometimes judged more by their service than by their products. And it's for that reason that wise leaders work hard at improving the serve of their organization. Why? Because pleasant, responsive, thorough, and gracious service is a key to building something great. And according to Jesus, it's one of the keys to building a great life. Jesus didn't just teach this, he modeled it. One of the most moving stories in the New Testament is where we see Jesus' example of unexpected and amazing service. It was on the night before he was crucified that Jesus gathered his disciples in an upper room in Jerusalem for a meal. As the disciples assembled that evening, an important act of service had been ignored. It was a custom at times like this for the dusty and muddy feet of dinner guests to be washed when they arrive at the host's home. Foot washing was a lowly job, usually performed by a servant in the house, or at least by the host of the meal. It was a statement of care, kindness, and hospitality. It was a way to show love for the people that were present. None of the disciples who were there were willing to volunteer for this task. They all felt like it was beneath them, that it was a servant's job, and nobody wanted to be identified with that role. In the midst of all of this, Jesus, the Son of God, did something incredible. Take a look at the way the Apostle John described it. Jesus knew that the Father had put him in complete charge of everything, that he came from God and was on his way back to God. So he got up from the supper table, set aside his robe, and put on an apron. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the feet of the disciples, drying them with his apron. Jesus was well aware of what was about to happen to him. He knew that in a few hours he'd be arrested and crucified. Nevertheless, he took his eyes off of himself and thought about serving others. And more than thinking about serving, he actually did it. He got up and did what no one else in the room was willing to do. And through his example, Jesus taught us how we ought to live. After washing their feet, he put on his robe and sat down and asked, "Do you understand what I was doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that is what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I've given an example for you to follow. Do as I've done to you." How many times do we think and act the same way Jesus' disciples did that night? Our first attitude is, I don't do feet. That kind of stuff is for someone else. I'm too important to do that. My prayer is that we all be motivated by the example of Jesus and do for others what he's done for us. Amen.